they will be able to look at certain things to go like, this venue, yes, it looks great, but here's things to think about, right? Things like access times before and after. From a rental perspective, for example, you and I both know if we don't have access well in advance and well after, those delivery fees are exponential for a reason on your end, but people don't think about that. No. So before you know it, you've spent $2,000 more on that when you could have just gotten a venue that was less stress, potentially what you wanted.
Everyone, welcome back to the Special Event Rentals podcast. I am sitting here with Sandra Bettina Wedding and Events, and I'm so excited to chat with her on everything venues, timelines, and what it takes to be a planner in our industry in Edmonton. So here she is. Hello. I always love to ask this question, Sandra. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and why you got into wedding planning?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's funny, I have that I want to call it like typical story of I planned my own wedding, which by the way, 10 years exactly tomorrow. So it's just wild that it's been 10 years already. And like I've truly always just been social and like loved it. And I remember when I was in business school and then I worked in HR, and I just remember being like, I want to plan the events instead of hiring the event planners. So there was always that little like piece there. And then I planned my own wedding, and my photographer, actually, she probably wouldn't even remember this. She's still around. She said, oh, like, who's your planner? And I said, I don't have one. And she goes, you should think about doing this. Shout out Nicole Ashley. It was you.
Ooh, Nicole.
Probably does not remember saying that to me, but it like kind of stuck with me because I was like, I loved it so much. I loved all of it. I loved planning it. I loved the vendor communication. I loved the design. I loved making the timeline. I loved it all. So that's what I did. I just kind of started very slowly, like we all do. I launched my website, I remember, on June 17th. And then on July 8th, I found out I was pregnant with my first baby. So I've grown all my babies, my business babies and my actual babies together.
That's crazy. And I feel like you're really into business too.
I am.
There's a lot of planners in Edmonton that are same story. They plan their own wedding. They then start their own business, and come the next year, they either can't deal with it or they just fall a bit short. So I commend you for actually establishing yourself in the Edmonton community, and you're one of the top planners.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really like working with rentals. We deal with all planners, and we see that pattern. And I think you set it apart. And I think one of the reasons is because you're good at business too. You're good at planning, but you're also good at business.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that, one of the good things, but also one of the bad things about this industry is that there's really no barrier to entry. So just quite frankly, anyone off the street can just put up a website and say, I offer wedding planning services. And a lot of people do fall in love with it for themselves. But what you don't realize when you start planning is there's so much more to it. So for yourself, it's fun because you get to pick what you want. You get to manage your own, family dynamics. You get to it's just you're in full control. And then as soon as you start offering that service to someone else, it's no longer about you. In fact, it's the complete opposite. You have to put yourself aside and like really become a consultant and a confidant and an expert, but you have to take the emotion out of it. But you are taking on a lot of other people's emotions, right? Yeah. So then in order to marry, no pun intended, but in order to marry that, the planning and the creative piece with the emotional intelligence, because I think to be a planner, you have to have very high emotional intelligence. And then also the business piece of it, of course, because you can't just be giving and doing fun things. There is a business piece to it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what you articulated that beautifully. That's exactly what I mean is I don't feel people when they get into wedding planning or these small businesses and they start that website that they realize the business side or they realize how much emotion goes into each bride or groom or couples, like when they're all coming at you, that's a lot. That's tiring.
It is a lot. And I always say, like, you have to love every piece of this in order to do it long and in order to do it well.
Right.
And I've always known that I loved it, but I didn't know how much I loved it until the pandemic, because even during that, like we as planners, we worked tirelessly changing. And like, quite frankly, most of us were not getting paid for that. Right. None of us had that in our contract to be like, I don't want to replan your wedding 4 times, but we did it. And even during all that time, I never once thought I don't want to do this.
Right. And I think there's an importance to the planners that did that during COVID or didn't like close their doors or, were kind of difficult to deal with all of the rules and just,
of course,
this has never happened. So how was that for you, planning through all of that and getting all of that? And what I'm trying to say is basically because you did that, your brand stayed.
Yeah.
Like it didn't get knocked over. It didn't get pushed aside. It was like, no, Sandra's willing to kind of work with me. I know that sucks that it has to be over the 4 years or we have to pick up and stop and all of that. So I think that also plays into a bit of your brand. Like you're willing to do all of that.
For sure. I mean, I would say actually COVID kind of like really helped to like expedite my growth and kind of the types of clients that we get. And a lot of it, honestly, I do think is because we're highly referral based. So much of what, the business that I get is referrals. And one thing that I am starting to really pride myself on, and I think that, being humble and that humility, I think is also like really important, but sometimes you have to give yourself kudos. But what I've heard over and over is like that my clients feel heard. Yeah. And they felt heard and they felt taken care of. And I think that is something that I do pride myself on now. But COVID, I think, is what helped for that to be seen and then for that to be talked about.
Right. Well done.
Thank you.
I want to dive into a little bit about, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Cut this.
Difference between...
Nope. There was one question. Give me 1 second. Yeah. It was about the COVID, What is it, Sandra?
I don't know.
You're making me blush because you're talking so nicely.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about right now the difference between... I feel like there's lots... It's a big topic that I want to bring up right now. Yeah. I think there's a lot... that couples don't know the difference between certain services or certain titles. And those titles are designers, day of coordinator, a planner. And I kind of want your 2 cents on all of this and what is the difference between all of them? And can you share what to look for when hiring in these areas?
Oh, I have big thoughts. And this is a huge topic, like you said. And I think that, again, that like lack of barrier to entry is what muddies the waters even more. And I think that a lot of planners too, who kind of start off, they muddy the waters for the industry because they don't know either. So I think a lot of it kind of starts off with, as a lot of planners, most of us have bleeding hearts. And we have something that's called scope creep, right? I don't know if you've heard of that, but like somebody hires you for one thing and then you give more and you give more. So that again muddies the waters even more because you're hearing like, well, my friend had a day of coordinator and they did their floor plan and they did their design. And then it's just like, what do all these people do? What does this mean? And I've been guilty of it myself when I first started too. So this is not saying, fault at anybody, but I think we do it to ourselves. Right. So quite frankly, like there is a huge difference between all of those, right? Like let's start off with the most basic one, which is my venue has a coordinator. I don't need a coordinator. The biggest piece there is the venue coordinator does not work for you, period. The venue coordinator works for the venue. So they have the venue's best interests at heart. They are managing the venue's rule book, the venue's regulations. They're managing the venue's AC, light switches, and making sure that, quite frankly, you respect the venue, right? That's not to say they can't be helpful and they're not great. And quite frankly, like as a wedding planner, I love when you work with a venue coordinator because they help me because I don't know where the buttons are for certain things, right? But they don't work for you. So a wedding day coordinator, they are essentially your employee. They're employed by you. You sign a contract with them. They are the ones that are managing your best interest, your timeline, your vendors that are coming in. So that's really the biggest difference. And I think that I always say, even if a full service planner is not in your budget, make room for a wedding day management coordinator, right? Crucial. So that's really the biggest difference. So if there's couples listening and they're going, my venue has a coordinator, great. You still need your own.
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece.
Yeah. And I see why couples think that is being married for your first time. You have no idea what this industry is. I mean, you have a pretty good idea from movies or if your friend got married, but you have no idea what's behind the scenes. So when you start with a venue and they give you an invoice and they've included a venue coordinator, of course, what else are they going to think? They're going to think, okay, great, I have a coordinator, but from my knowledge, those coordinators don't help you with other venues.
Yeah.
They don't help you with a timeline. They're there for the
don't.
venue. They,
Yeah.
like you said, they don't work.
Yeah.
I
I wish that venue coordinators included like a clear job description with that bullet point, like a sub bullet. And I actually have huge and mad respect for venue coordinators that say, venue coordinator, but we need you to have your own coordinator too. And venues, some are picking up on that. There's some, higher end hotels that require that. I think it's great. And I feel like that should just be standard practice.
And I feel like it would alleviate so much for them.
100%. That's why the ones that do it.
They're not in this like dance of like when, it's the 11th hour and the bride's like, where's my timeline? They're like, I guess I didn't articulate that properly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like, yes, that should be on your contract. And yes, they should explain exactly what their services are.
Agree.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
And another kind of difference we see a lot is the difference between a designer.
Let's talk about that too.
And a planner or those services. Like there's so many people that come in here and, like myself, I can create. I can create for you, but that's kind of where I stop.
Yeah.
But then going back to what you said, that door kind of creaks open and you get your hands a little, do you know what I'm trying to say? A little muddy. And then they're like, enter Sandra Bettina. And then it's like, okay, well, so it's, there is a difference there.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a huge difference. And I think in many other parts of the world, including our neighbors in the States, there tends to be, and it's, again, not everywhere, but there's a very clear line between what a planner does and what a designer does, right? So really in kind of like Cole's notes, the most simple way to understand it is like your planner plans the logistics, gets the vendor team for you together, makes the timeline. They typically, an actual planner does not touch the design and the creative. So if it's just a planner, right? A designer takes care of like the aesthetic piece of it, including the floor plan, including the tablescaping, including working with the florist if they don't offer that. Again, it gets messy because sometimes florists are also full designers, right? Like, so it can be a lot. And then usually your planner will also be the wedding day coordinator. So because they are the ones that plan the logistics, they'll kind of like tie it all up in a bow and manage all of that. Right? So there's kind of like clear distinctions. However, someone like myself does all three. Right?
That's what I was just going to go into.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. So I think, but it's really important when you're shopping to really get a good understanding of like, what does that person offer? Where does a service start and where does a service end? Because everybody does different things. So like in my proposals, for example, and in my contracts, I literally have it broken down by planning. Here's the bullet points that are included. Designing. Here's the bullet points that are including. Coordination, here's the bullet points that are included.
Right.
So that's for our full service. We have some couples that only hire us for design and coordination. Well, their contract only says those pieces. The planning of like finding your vendors and all that, that's on you, any non-design related vendors, right? So I think it's really important. We could go on and we could write a whole blog post about all of this and write a book about it, quite frankly, but it's really important as a couple to do your research and like get a very clear understanding of where those service levels start and end, and understand that less is not always better.
Right.
And understand where your strengths, weaknesses, and times are.
Right. And do you help couples through that when they're coming to you? So if a couple comes to you and let's say they don't want full planning that offers the planner, the designer, and the day of coordinator, or do you navigate them into the right service for you and them?
All the time. Yeah. So like, I mean, one of the biggest things when somebody comes to me and we do kind of that initial exploration conversation is figuring out like, where are you at and like, why are you here? Because sometimes people can't articulate what it is that they need. So we ask more than like, well, what service are you interested in? Of course, that's one of the questions, but then also really understanding like their lifestyle, how far have they gotten? What do they enjoy and not enjoy doing? How good are you at certain things, etc.
Right.
Because a lot of people just come in saying like, I want a day of coordinator. Like we don't even offer that at the moment, right? So like, but what do you actually need? And we'll kind of guide you to that, because some people, they don't need everything.
No.
Some people don't, right? But a lot of people do.
And I guess that's where I want to ask the question is like, as you get on, let's say they start off with just the designer, can we add to those services as like when they start getting deeper and deeper into the design, where it becomes that borderline, okay, now I'm starting your timeline. Now I'm starting all of these other things. Is that, I mean, if available, do you add that on?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we are here to help the clients that we work with, right? So if we see that we are kind of expanding the scope creep beyond what is a comfortable and reasonable amount. So of course there's always going to be the odd question that spills over, and that's okay, right? But if we're going, okay, like we are now on a tipping point, then you have to have that conversation and say, we are ultimately here to help you. However, you have booked XYZ.
Yeah. And I feel like you're good at managing expectations, because without those expectations of the services and those tough conversations, I think that's where people or planners start losing money or start getting into that territory of, well, she said that her, like you were saying before, the other planner provided her with a floor plan. So now I feel guilty and maybe I should be doing that. So I think managing expectations is key. Yeah.
And I would say I am good at managing expectations now.
Right.
And because it's been learned.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy? We've known each other for 10 years.
I know. It's wild.
I remember when I first came and you were here, and now look.
I know. It's wild.
It's so wild.
It goes fast. And it's like so crazy in our industry. We think of life as wedding seasons.
But that's real.
How's your season?
Yeah.
It's great.
It's great. We're busy. We don't have a life. We're busy, soaking our feet. We're, we're tired and we're drinking coffee.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think that's, it's not necessarily related to the question you asked about what the differences are, but having a planner that has certain relationships helps you as the couple in a way that I cannot explain.
I talk about every planner that has been here or some sort of like topic on weddings. I can't express enough that vendor relationships are super important.
Yeah.
They only help you.
They only help you. And you want a planner. I always cringe when I see a planner put up a question box on like Instagram. Does anybody have recommendations for? I'm like the couple could have done that themselves. Like, do you know what I mean? And like, even if you don't know, do quiet research.
Totally.
But I think that again, like when you start to hire somebody that's, a little bit more established and that has those, that's going to help you. Yeah. I pulled off the biggest, most bonkers wedding that I've ever done in 3.5 months. Not because I'm a superstar, but because of my relationships, because I was able to lean on my network and my people that were there for me last minute with big demands, and we crushed it.
Yeah.
That was relationships.
Everyone showed up for you.
Everyone showed up for me.
I mean, yes, ultimately
for each other.
Yes,
of course,
for each other, the couple, but they all rallied.
Yeah.
That I find that super special to Edmonton. I think we have a really good industry of people we can rely on,
but we're small.
We're small. We're small. So we're all kind of relying on the same people at the same time.
But which is why those relationships matter even more. Even more. Like ultimately, yes, I'm an advocate for my client and I always will be, but I won't burn a bridge with the people that have held my hand before and will continue to hold my hand later.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Before, when we were chatting in my office before we started the podcast, you said something that I wanted to kind of share with everyone here, and I want you to speak on it. And it's the question I blanked on before. But you said that your business was a boutique business.
Yeah.
And I want to that kind of got me just excited. And I think that there's not many boutique wedding planners out there. And I want to hear from you why you think Sandra Bettina Wedding and Events is. And yeah, I think again, I was kind of trying to find my footing, and I always laugh and say when I first started, like the only requirements I had for a wedding was like, it was somebody that was living, breathing, getting married and was willing to like give me a little bit of money for what I did. Like that's how we started, right? But you figure out very quickly what you like. And for me, like truly what I love is to be involved start to finish. And what I love is to have relationships and to make an impact on my clients throughout the planning process, not just the wedding day, right? So like, I love those relationships and I love those connections and I like to know what their dog's name is. And like, you can't do that when you're scaling and scaling and scaling. You can't possibly do it. So like, that's really what it was. I went like, what do I really excel at and what am I good at and what do I enjoy? Because I think if you have a planner that truly likes what they do, you're going to benefit from that. You're not just a number. You're not just moving through the motions. Like, it's like I truly care that you like what's happening. That's amazing. Like I truly care. Because I feel like some couples, I've heard the planning process is difficult And then the wedding day is, I mean,
awkward.
Awkward.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not beautiful. It's not that, you know, the planner didn't show up. It was just, they didn't have that connection. So I think with the boutique side of, you know, this wedding planning, you kind of have to be selective a little bit.
100%.
And they have to be selective. And I feel like it has to, you guys almost have to like really like each other to start this relationship.
We do. And I always say that during like I don't even like calling them sales call, but during that kind of like exploration, like the first time we talk, I always say like, I want you to get to know me, but I also want to get to know you. Mm-hmm. So again, in our industry, a lot of people, that first phone call is a quick 15-minute conversation. And I don't buy into it. I immediately invite them for a face-to-face in my studio if we can make it work.
Yeah.
Because I would rather spend an hour getting to know you and then maybe decide it's not for us for whatever reason, than to think the 20 minutes or 15-minute phone call went okay, and then neither one of us enjoyed for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. That's a long time.
It is a long time.
It's a long time.
So if we don't connect on the human level in that hour, and we talk about the wedding honestly for 20 minutes, and after that
it's just a chat.
We just hang out.
Yeah.
We have to be able to do that because it's like you spend a long time. I always say this to them. I said, you have to like me. Like you have to like me, not just what I do, not just what you see on Instagram, but you have to like me. If you don't, this is not going to work, and vice versa. You have to like your photographer because you spend a lot of time with them. You don't have to like your rental company rep. You don't have to like your florist, but you have to like the people you're spending a lot of time with.
Yeah. It's almost like you're dating them.
100%.
It's like
it's like a job interview both ways.
A job interview, and then we enter like the dating stage and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Yep.
Crazy.
It's absolutely crucial. So yeah, that's for me why boutique. And that's why like I'm incredibly involved in like every little aspect of the wedding planning. But I like it that way, and my couples like it that way. And I am their, call it confidant. Like I'm their planner, I'm their designer, I'm their person they can come to when they're having 100%. And I do advocate for them. I do advocate for them. 100% I do advocate for them because I just think that it's part of my job. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So it's really easy for me to be like, let's go. But if I see something that doesn't feel right, you and I had this conversation the other day. I went, something years off. Let's just talk about it. Great.
Yeah. You advocate.
Yeah.
That's what you work for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. All right, Sandra, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty of venues.
Oh,
I know couples, I feel like there's so many. Let's start with the amount of pop-up venues we've seen in the last little bit in Edmonton. There is so many of them. Some I don't even know about. Some people can walk in, they're like, hey, I'm getting married at the Yellow Barn. And I'm like, oh, I haven't heard the Yellow Barn yet. Do you know what I mean? There's so many pop-ups. There also are so many staples in Edmonton.
Yes.
So I guess let's kind of dive into like, what would you recommend? What are some things that you want couples to look for before committing to a venue? I think this is your first step, right? When you're planning, I would think is, where am I getting married? First your date, and where am I getting married? I think that a lot of couples fall in love before they know everything. And they might jump in with like their 2 feet, but I feel like sometimes research and all of that. So I guess what do you have to say about all of that?
I have many thoughts. Okay. Like it's so funny because yes, we have a lot of venues that have popped up, and yet I, as a planner, planning the types of weddings I like to plan, I feel like we don't have enough.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. So that's really interesting because again, I wonder how many venues are popping up because the wedding industry is lucrative. That's a whole other conversation. So it's just really quick turnarounds. And those venues, unfortunately, often have not consulted people like us who have been at 100 other venues to go, how can I build this so that it's sustainable and it's not just quality, but logistically it's also
manageable,
reasonable, etc. Right? So like that's that. So I would say to couples that are choosing their venue, like, I don't just want to say a blanket statement like choose carefully, but choose carefully.
Yeah.
Look at more than one thing and ask lots of questions. The other thing that I think is really, in my opinion, a worthwhile investment if you're shopping for a venue, even if you don't have it in the budget to hire a full service planner, a lot of very good professional planners will offer a 2 or 3 hour consultation fee. Take them venue shopping with you because they will ask the right questions. They will be able to look at certain things to go like, this venue, yes, it looks great, but here's things to think about, right? Things like access times before and after. From a rental perspective, for example, you and I both know if we don't have access well in advance and well after, those delivery fees are
Skyrocket.
exponential for a reason on your end, but people don't think about that. No. So before you know it, you've spent $2,000 more on that when you could have just gotten a venue that was less stress, potentially what you wanted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The other thing that 99% of venues do, in my opinion, is oversell capacity. And it drives me nuts. So like it says 200. Is it 200? Is it 200 back to back? And you're going to have to move grandma off her table because of the dance floor?
Yeah. And break down the tables for the buffet. To
So I typically say to my clients, I'm like, whatever the venue tells you, minus 20%. That's actually your comfortable capacity.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's even with tents. When people call in for tents, it's like, how many does this fit? I'm like, okay, well, there's lots of things to consider here. It fits 200, but you're going to have to minus like 50 to 60 people if you want a dance floor, a head table,
Exactly. So, So I think that venues oftentimes don't look at that. And I don't even know if they know it because they didn't do their own research before they just decided. They just look at fire code. Oh, that's your capacity.
Fire code is real though, Sandra. They're cracking down in Edmonton.
Well, I mean, I get that, but like it's usually less for a comfortable event because you want space. You want Uncle Bob to be able to push his chair back, lean back and listen to the speech. Yeah. You want people to be able to get by and the service to be comfortable. You want to not have to squeeze 10 people at a 5-foot round. Like you want all of these things because it's not just about squeezing people into a space you paid for. It's about them having a great experience. And all of those intangibles really add to that.
Totally. And and I think for you, it goes back to vendor relationships. When you have a couple that is going to explore venues, you know where to take them with the knowledge you have. Yeah. My sister is getting married. I think I shared this with you in May, and the venue did the same thing. They're like 180 people will fit in here. She's like, so perfect. Like I have 160 people, no problem. And she took me just a virtual tour. And I was like, Jessica,
you cannot.
There is no way. Like, I think you're barely fitting 120 in there. And she's like, no. But like, because the venue's there and I'm her sister, the venue's right. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Anyways, we got the floor plan back. It's tight.
Yeah.
It's tight. Yeah. It's tight. So we can't have a dance floor in that room. And
then there goes your flow.
There goes your whole flow. And she's not that she's up. I feel like she's come to the realization that has to happen, but she was upset about it.
Sometimes you have to do what you have to do, right?
Exactly.
But again, before you sign on the dotted line, understand and ask those questions, And
did you hear that, Jessica?
Yeah, Jessica. Listen.
Jessica,
she's too late now. She's too late now.
No, she signed on the deadline.
But no, and that's what it is, right? Like I think sometimes people, they just kind of are very impulsive, and I get that. And I think, we can go on and on about this, like that, like instant gratification that all of us are used to, especially kind of that, I'm going to date myself, but that next generation of, people getting married, it's just, I want quick, let's go, but it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to do that. And then asking questions. Again, venues are like, chairs are included, linens are included, this is included, this. And I'm just like, okay, what does that look like?
Is it an 85 by 85?
That's usually what it is.
Square, or
Two
is
squares
it
put together
to the ground?
Bingo.
And couples don't know that.
They don't know.
They are planning their wedding for the first time. They're coming in blindsided. All they know is I need a venue. I need this.
Yeah. So that the other thing too with venues, I would say like really think about what you want your day to feel like before you just go, that's a cool venue. And I don't just mean that from how it looks, but like, does inside, outside matter to you? Does having a bar in there matter to you? Like 99% of our couples, I always say like, we kind of have a tagline that's like sophisticated in design, but like still joyful. Upbeat in execution, that's what we call it. So like you want it to look a certain way, yes, but like most of our couples still want to party. They still want a packed dance floor. You don't get that when your bar is outside of where the dance floor is. People just, it's like looking at things like that again, I don't think people consider.
Yeah. And I feel like couples don't realize the weight a planner has. They can go through all these logistics for, not only can they help you select a venue, but they now can go through the whole logistics with you.
Exactly.
How are your guests getting from ceremony? Like,
what's the flow? Where's the cocktail hour? Like, are you okay with people being in the reception room before you ever get to see it? I don't like that. I don't, again, most of my couples, we do a room reveal with them because you have spent so much money decorating this reception room. And then you come in there, everyone's had cocktail hour. Well, Aunt Sally has her purse there. Uncle Bob has his jacket on there. There's wet tables already because somebody spilled a glass of water. Like, that's not what you had envisioned. When we design a room, we don't envision it messy like that.
Do you remember when you first started and that did happen? How panicked you were? You're like, okay, well, Auntie Susie's, purse is over there. Do I move it? Do I move that gentleman's jacket that's hanging off the back of the chair? We have photos happening. And
I'm very comfortable now telling Aunt Susie she's not allowed in. I just want to put my purse down. That's exactly why I'm here not letting you in. That's what I don't want to happen.
Exactly. But it's just so crazy how experience and how this 10 years has evolved into, no, Aunt Susie, you have to carry that purse. Okay. Yeah.
You can hang on another 30 minutes. Exactly. Susie, go get a cocktail. We got you. There's cocktails out there too.
Exactly. So yeah, I think the importance of a planner, if anyone can work it into their budget, even just a day of coordinator, I think it's absolutely worth it. It takes so much pressure.
Yeah. But I will also say even the day of coordinators, be very careful with that term. Day of coordinators. Anybody that's selling themselves as just a day of coordinator, I'll just show up. There's no way that they can come and execute a day you've planned by just showing up on that day. You have to be involved at least a month or two prior, in my opinion. You have to have that download of everything that the couple has planned to be able to do it. And it's so funny. The other day, I got a text from a previous client. Her friend was getting married. She had a different coordinator. No big deal. That's great. And this previous client texted me, hey, where can I get a guest book? We didn't know we needed one. And I'm going, why was this conversation not had with the person that is getting paid to do this?
Yeah.
That tells me that proper download didn't happen.
Absolutely.
So when you're shopping, even for any level, I always say, ask to see their behind the scenes. I always share our full planning during my consultation calls. I don't share it in a PDF, but I share my screen or pop it up on we have a TV in our studio. And I say, here's exactly what it looks like behind the scenes so that this is how our behind the scenes looks. So they see all the checks and balances we have. Because as organized and as creative and whatever as we are, we're still human.
Absolutely.
So you have to have somebody that's invested time and energy to plan those checks and balances so they don't miss something.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a great advice for all couples. And I think another good thing to take home is with a day of coordinator and making sure that they do say, we'll touch base a month before, 2 months before, and not that they're just going to show up because no one knows anything at that point.
Then you're
who's making the because in my, I guess my knowledge is that a day of coordinator will still help you with your timeline.
They should.
Because it only benefits them. If I have 100%. No idea what's going on.
Yeah, they should.
They should. And they should be involved at least a month and a half before, kind of connecting with your vendors, getting that timeline going. And at then some point, don't leave it to too last minute because the bride doesn't want to be. No. I feel like a week of a wedding is important as well. And they don't want to be bombarded. I mean, there's going to be questions to be had, but they don't want to be planning their timeline or getting into nitty gritty. That should all already be done.
No, 100% I agree. But again, it's that lack of barrier to entry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fantastic planners and coordinators, and there's more, quite frankly, that aren't.
Yeah.
But some of that goes down to again, we can get into that too. What's an appropriate fee to pay a planner or coordinator? If it's too good to be true, there's a reason.
Yeah. And that I feel like that is a great point to be had, especially in our industry. Mm-hmm. I think you get what you pay for.
Yep.
You get what you pay for.
Yep.
That is it. That is all.
I agree.
You don't pay for services.
Yep.
You don't get them.
Yep.
You want to cheap out on your photography. Well, then that's something that you have to eat when you get your photos back.
Yep. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I always I have such a hard time understanding the couples that are willing to spend any amount of money, even if you have a budget wedding and it's $25,000, that's still $25,000 that you're willing to just whatever happens with it happens. That's what you're doing when you don't have a professional to manage that.
That's crazy.
That's really how to think about it. Whatever happens.
And that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for a lot of people to have a good time, and you want it to be the best it can be.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about timelines, what is a basic timeline? How do you build a timeline? Where do you start? And what are some pointers that you could give to couples when they're looking at their timeline and their day?
Great question. So one of the very first questions that I typically ask my couples is do you want to have a first look or not? Because that really drives so much of what we can do with the timeline and where certain things can happen. So for those people that don't know what a first look is, if there is anybody here, first look is when the couple sees each other, usually in private before the ceremony ever happens, right? So that's one of the first questions I ask, because that will determine so much of what, you know, goes on from there. So if the answer is yes, I typically love to do especially if it's at the same venue, a back-to-back. So we go straight from ceremony to cocktail hour into the reception. That is beautiful for the guest experience. And then even for the couple, it's great because they will do their first look. They'll get all of their photos over with before, and then they can just join the party, right? So that is this is like, again, talking in very big picture generality, but that tends to be a beautiful timeline for those couples, right? But a lot of our couples are also very traditional and they want that first look to be down the aisle. I can 100% understand that. I was one of those brides myself. I wanted that feeling. But then you obviously have a very different conversation, and there tends to be that break in between. And I know a lot of people are like, it's terrible. It's not that terrible for your guests. It's really not. You just have to be, again, careful with how you plan that. Right. So typically with those ones, they would have their ceremony, then do the photos. During your photo time, your guests would have a little bit of downtime. It's up to you. I have one wedding right now where we're planning a whole afternoon for the guests because they didn't like that there was a break. No problem. So we're feeding and serving them drinks the entire afternoon, having games, whatever, rented a separate room so they can play board games and whatever. Awesome. Great. But that's not all that common, to be honest, right?
And is there, I guess, what are your thoughts on with the ceremony versus like the distance between a ceremony site and a reception site? Does that matter to guests? Do you think?
I do have thoughts on that, and I do like for them to be as close as possible. Yeah. I do think that unless there is a real good emotional reason, for example, like we're going to have the ceremony at my parents' acreage, I grew up there, they're selling it, whatever, you know what I mean? Like
if there's that emotional connection.
Exactly. I understand that. And having a private residence ceremony is a lot easier than a private residence reception. So then I kind of understand, but otherwise I would say like, keep it fairly close. Right. Keep it fairly close because it can be tricky. And the other thing to think about too is because we do have a lot of venues, especially locally, that are kind of out on the outskirts of the city, like you're driving 30, 45 minutes, that can be really challenging. So I would say if you're choosing a venue like that, again, going back to that, in my opinion, you should be okay with having, a backup plan for rain. Like you might have to be okay with doing it outside because in my opinion, you should go back to back. It is very challenging for your guests to expect them to just wait around there or have to drive back into town and then back.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, that's why I wanted your opinion on it. I think people do struggle with the distance between ceremony sites. And I think when you do have that emotional connection, it makes sense. And your guests can resonate with that. But if it's just because you like the ceremony site and you like the reception, I feel like that is a nuisance. Yeah. For your guests.
then it's like, it's a road trip for your guests.
It's like, okay, I'm going to stop here and then we're going to go 45 minutes. But it's doable.
Yeah.
If you want it,
everything's doable. Yeah.
Everything is doable. Yeah. We'll send them with a little like audio in their car or something.
Exactly.
For the drive.
But I also do believe in there's no such thing as perfect, but we can try to get as darn close as possible. Yeah. I always strive for that with that little caveat of like, it won't be, but we'll get as close as we can.
Yeah. That is, all weddings are just like, they're heartfelt and they're so emotional and they're
not all, but they should be.
I guess the good ones I'm talking
about. Exactly. Yeah. The good ones.
The good ones. I think things do get missed, and you're right. I think we strive for perfection for sure. Yeah. And we almost meet it most times.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And to me, the perfect wedding ultimately is one where the guests remember a feeling. And you remember a feeling. Those to me are the perfect ones. And the feeling should be a positive one, although I feel like I don't need to kind of explain that. But those are the most perfect weddings where they go, it was just amazing. Yeah. It's not like, oh, just the food was good or just that was good, And I like often...
You took the words right out of their mouth, or you like, they have nothing to say.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just like, this is amazing.
But to me, the best weddings, and I think we excel at, is like marrying the process and the pretty. So it's the logistics, it's like the flow, it's what your guests experience, but the pretty matters too. Because it's not just about the stuff, but it's about how the stuff comes together, that it makes you feel a certain way. That's what you remember. You're not going to remember necessarily, oh, that menu was really beautiful. But like how that comes together with the charger and the candles and the flowers and the lighting, and you'll remember that. And then if the flow is good, those are the best weddings.
Yeah. And I'm so excited because I feel like this leads us right into what else the other topic I want to talk about is rentals and decor and all of that. I guess what are some things you can share with couples that you find are important when renting decor and kind of small budgets versus whatever budgets or anything? Where do you start? How do you start that creative process?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I mean, obviously we'll just start with like a general mood board. I think that's very common. I want to just have a good understanding of what is it, the feeling that they want. And then we create a color story. And I think this is a mistake that a lot of people who don't enlist a professional help make is they just do I call it the grade 12 grad approach, where we just have 2 colors. And it's just copy paste 2 colors. Okay, you can have 2 colors, but have various shades of those colors. That's kind of that like multi-dimensional to the eye that like creates a designer's touch. So I think that's really important just to go into that as kind of like your blueprint. The next thing I always do is do a floor plan, because a floor plan is literally a free way to add design.
Yep.
It's a free way.
But it's all, don't you find everything kind of it revolves around the floor plan?
100%.
How like the spacing between the tables, do we have to like make a different route for this? Like everything revolves around that floor plan.
It does.
Where's my hanging centerpiece going? What table it's like, exactly what I mean. But I find a floor plan is essential.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, again, when they don't have kind of that professional planner designer with them, they probably come in here and they just start pulling, this linen. And you're like, hold on a minute.
Exactly.
Like, let's take it back to basics here. What are we designing?
Yeah.
What are we choosing linens for? Right. So like, I love, this about me. I love unique floor plans. I love mixing rectangular and rounds and creating cool spaces. I love king's tables. Like I love doing that. And it doesn't matter, even though I would say like our average client has probably a higher than average design budget, which is great, makes my job easier. But even the people that don't, you can do it for free with a design, with a cool floor plan. Yeah. And even the couples that do have a big design budget, like I'm still not here just to like, fling around money. We still have to, I'm still protecting that for them. So the floor plan is where I start.
And you do that well.
Thank you.
You really do. I feel like we've worked together a long time, and I still get questions like, Kaitlyn,
why does this cost what it is?
Or the cost is high, and I don't mind paying the cost, but I want to know. Like I am speaking for my clients, so I'm not going back and saying this $1,800 charge is for, they're just going to come and set up. It's like, no, why? And all of the logistics behind it. So I think that you do a pretty good job with that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And I hope I do it respectfully with you too.
Absolutely. I don't find you to be aggressive. I think all planners need to do that. Yeah. And there's only a few that do, that I get the privilege to work with that do that.
Yeah.
And I think they should know. And I think they should know everything that they're spending their clients' money.
For sure. And and sometimes
they should know exactly what that charge is for, or
agree. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I think again, a good planner is going to be able to anticipate questions they're going to get, and we need to have an answer for it. I don't know. The rental company just charges that is not a good answer. No. What is it that's being covered with this? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You do a great job of that.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I think the whole thing is just, I don't know. I find you can really pull together a timeline, but also advocate for them.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're hired for.
It is. Yeah. And it does, like I said, I truly care. Like, I don't know, like I care about them as humans.
But do you think that's why you're so successful?
I think there's part of it for sure.
Because it seems like you care about all aspects of your business. It's not, I feel like first off is definitely the clients, but second is your business and all of that. So I think you do a great job with that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I mean, I think, I don't know, some of it just comes down to like, just be a good human.
And your personality's for it.
Yeah. And I think that it's easy to tell when any vendor or any service provider, even if it's not in the wedding industry, is here just to do a transaction. Mm-hmm. Literally, like on our marketing material, it says like, this is not a transaction. It's not.
No, I feel like it's so much emotion.
Yeah.
So back to rentals.
Design.
Where would you start with rent? Like, let's say you had the perfect budget and where would you start?
Okay, so interestingly, so after floor plan, the next thing that I do, it's not rentals, but it's flowers. Usually I go to flowers because I can pull.
That's interesting.
That's usually what I do. Yeah, so I do it a little bit different. So I go mood board, floor plan, flowers, because I like to pull from the flowers. That's when I pull into the rentals.
Nice.
Knowing what our flowers are going to look like, because I like to have, like, I call them bounce points for the eye. And because flowers, you know, Mother Nature only has so many colors and they're beautiful. But then I like to go, okay, like, what are some shades that we're pulling in? And then I will come do rentals knowing approximately what flowers we've selected so that it all plays nicely together.
That is a different way of doing things.
I know.
My mind goes to linen next.
I know.
Or you know, your base color, taking all of those hues or the palette and picking one. So I didn't know that, Sandra.
Yeah, that's what I do. So before I ever see you, and that's why I often come to you quite late in the game.
Yeah.
That's why.
With floral arrangements.
Yeah, or with floral arrangements.
You bring your floral arrangements here.
That's why. Yeah, so I do it a little differently. I think a lot of people do linens and whatever, but I do it the other way because I want to see how is this floral, you know, composition and the vase we've chosen and whatever, how's that going to play off of the linens, the chairs, the cutlery, the plates, whatever else we choose.
So it sounds like florals are pretty important to you.
Well, yeah, I'm a pretty floral heavy designer, I would say. If you look at my work, a lot of it is. Yeah. We've done it without florals too.
Totally.
You know, we've done mostly candle heavy, but yeah, I'm a pretty floral heavy. I love it. And I don't do florals. Yeah. We have obviously amazing partners that do it, but they're important to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of not shocked, but I'm a little shocked.
Yeah.
Okay. So then after that, you go to linens.
Then I come see you. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. And then, it's linens and chairs. And I will say though, we have a general idea. So even when I'm designing the flower idea and the concept, again, I'm not a floral designer, but I have a very good idea of what I want. I have a general idea of like approximately what linen I want with it and approximately what chair I want with it. But then it's awesome to come here and feel it. 'Cause I'm a very texture heavy person. And I really, truly believe that the material we use makes a massive difference. I always say like a white linen is not a white linen is not a white linen. Period.
I agree with that.
Satin is a different feeling than poly, is a different feeling than cotton, is a different feeling than velvet. Different.
And they all showcase very differently.
100%.
So velvet, majestic, satin, they all look, especially when you even take them outside of here.
Yeah.
They look different.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
It is. And then thinking about like keeping your overall feeling of the wedding, not just how are the color hues going to play together, but like what is the message that this client wants to send to their guests? Is it ultra formal? Is it more fun and flirty? What is it? Because those linens matter.
Yeah.
You know, like velvet is one of those ones. It's a heavier material. You can use it in all sorts of applications, but it's unlikely that this is going to be a 40-degree outside linen that you're going to have. But people want it because it's sexy. Well, it doesn't always work.
No. And linens are very impactful, as you just
huge
kind of articulated. They're very impactful. What is like your go-to next on table decor? Like, do you have to would you recommend a charger over cutlery, or is it cutlery before charger, or is it like votive before? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I deal with contracts all the time.
Yeah.
And it adds up quickly.
It adds up very quickly.
You want votives, you want charger plates, you want, a full set of gold cutlery, which is a basic now, I feel like, for anyone is a cutlery.
Yeah.
So what would you, I guess, preference?
Yeah. For me, I would say if you had no money for absolutely anything else, nothing else, I prioritize a floor length linen, a nice chair, and candles.
Yeah, me too.
To me, those are three where I'm like, those three are non-negotiables.
No. Well, I think the floor length linen, is super impactful. It changes the whole space. We're not looking at legs of the table, and a chair is just, you have 150 guests. That is a great way to spend your money.
It is. I saw a wedding recently that had your chairs, like your most expensive ones to Louis, and then the venue linens.
I saw that too.
And I was confused. I didn't understand.
Why?
It just immediately went from here to here, in my opinion.
Yes. But for a couple, I feel like that really took the venue to a whole other
It did.
realm. I think they thought that it was going to cover the linen.
But again, those questions maybe weren't asked. I don't know.
Absolutely.
And I'm confused because that's one of the first things I always say, like, when we were back when we used to offer wedding day management, my venue includes linen. I'm like, what's the size?
Yeah.
I want to know immediately.
Or so much like exactly what I asked. They're like, I'll stick with the venue linen. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to ask the, your venue coordinator if that's a full length.
Yeah.
Are they layering 85 by 85? So do we have a 90?
Yeah.
Do we have nothing?
I don't even trust with full length anymore. I want to know the size. What is the size? Because it's full length and it's still like 6 inches off the ground.
I think that's couples. You really need to listen in because you are right. When they say full size, it is either they've overlapped 85 by 85 and the corners are touching the ground, or it's 6 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
So, definitely when you're in your venue tours, just look at the linen.
Yeah. Ask to see it.
But I guess what I'm hearing is the linen really pairs with the chair.
100%.
Yeah. For the impact that you want.
Yeah. And then candles are one of like your most inexpensive way to do it. And if the venue will allow it, get real candlelight. I feel so strongly about that.
Which venues don't allow?
There's only one I know of currently.
Okay, so most
will allow it as long as the flame is covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think for couples,
always say ask though, because again, with a lot of the private venues, sometimes I think that they maybe pop up and they're like, no, because we don't want damage, or we don't want, they're scared of fire hazards. Ask, but don't just do real. Do real.
Because I feel like there's a lot of like, when I'm reading contracts from venues, it's like you can't have open flame, and that registers to a couple. We can't have flame at all.
Period.
No, you just need it to be enclosed.
Exactly.
I trust me. You just need it to be enclosed in a votive. You have to have a chimney on a taper.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you can have real candlelight.
Yes. Yeah. Like 99%
you
of
can't get better than
it can't.
Real candlelight.
No, I 100% agree.
Are you against the flameless candles?
Which,
like any type of flameless candle, like the battery operated ones?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
they play their purpose, and I will take them over nothing.
Them. Like I've had to use them in certain like candelabras, for example, where like we couldn't do a real, because like this candelabra in particular needed tapers. We couldn't find one that was short enough that would fit. It was high enough but it's still, I would always choose real.
Yeah, me too.
Always.
Me too.
Always. I'm like, I feel so strongly about this.
Well, it's just so romantic.
It just looks real and it flickers.
Yeah.
And no, even the flickering fakes are still fake.
Yes. They are still
It's a little
fake.
plastic piece doing this.
Exactly. And you can see it going like this. It's not it's not hitting the glass beautifully, or the mercury, or like
exactly. I was going to say real candlelight. Yes, the reflection. It just creates romance, because you want to think about your wedding too. What is that going to look like when the lights go down? Mm-hmm. That matters. Is it just going to look orange? Because a lot of fake ones that's like orange light. It's not real.
Well, if your venue does not allow flame at all, you can don't worry.
Book the venue. Just
Can it? They are getting better at their flameless.
They are.
They're coming a long way, guys. So we're
just not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet.
No, we're not. What is some advice you could give for couples that don't necessarily can't work in a planner into their budget? Do you have any advice for them? I feel like we talked about venues, we talked about rentals. Is there anything else that you can think of that you would share with a couple that can't
work a planner? And I would still say, if you can't get a planner, like a full service planner is a massive investment. Yes. Let's just call it what it is.
It is an investment.
It should be, in my opinion, a 5-figure plus investment. Mm-hmm. If your full service planner is less than that, ask some questions.
Yep.
Just saying it. Like if you're just doing the math, like your planner should be spending about 300 hours at least on your wedding. Do the math. And if they're making less than minimum wage, it's a problem. Anyway,
you get what you pay for, everyone.
Exactly. But I would say I would highly recommend this. Reach out to a planner for a consultation so that they can give you a blueprint of what to do and when to do it. Because I think when you Google, you're getting such a big mishmash of, quite frankly, misinformation, or it's dated, or it's applicable in Mexico. Like there's just such a big variety. So like get a planner that works in the market that you're getting married in, and just do a 2-hour and they can give you a blueprint. Yeah. So for example, I work on something that's called phase-based planning. So I don't actually follow like timelines. Because if you Google like wedding planning timelines, it'll tell you 9 months before you should do this, 5 months before. Okay, those are great guidelines, but we've planned incredible weddings in under 6 months. Mm-hmm. So like now we're already like, we're just not getting married, right? No. So we do something called phase-based planning, where like the idea is like, all of the all of the tasks in phase 1 should be completed or near completion before you move on to phase 2. And those are very strategic. So how the dominoes fall, because people get excited. I want to get my favors right away. Like, hold on, right? So again, have a planner that kind of can guide you through that and give you a blueprint. And then you can go and do a lot of it yourself. Yeah. But I still would highly recommend that. Do a 2-hour consultation. That's not going to cost you that much, but it's going to save sanity. It's going to save time, frustration.
And you just have someone just to like, that's biased, I would say.
Yeah.
And that can just share their experiences at venues or what to do and all of that. So I think that's great. But it's also good for all couples to know that most planners actually do that now.
100%.
And don't be scared to reach out to a planner.
Exactly. Any planner. And the worst thing they're going to say is, sorry, we don't actually offer that service. Here's another professional, knowledgeable planner in our area that does.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's an investment that's going to protect the rest of your investment.
I think that's great advice.
And I think that is what I would recommend, because doing it alone is a lot. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's normal. And I always like compare it to building a house. Would you just give her and just start building a house without doing your research or having a contractor or at least somebody to tell you, hey, here's some things to think about?
Yeah. When you say things to think about, what would you tell a couple not to do with their timeline or during their day? Is there something that is like controversial that couples always do that you don't like?
Okay. So, I mean, I would say just, again, very generically, very big picture, be careful not to pack your day too full. I think a lot of people have that tendency to do that. Like, it's just, I want this and this and this. And you're just like, okay, like we want all of that, but think about you want to enjoy the day, right? So that's big picture. If we want to get granular, one of my, I want to call it unpopular opinions that I have as a wedding planner is to not do dinner during, speeches during dinner. And I know that's like, it's again, a lot of planners are probably right now rolling their eyes because they're like, what? I just don't believe in it. I am such a strong believer that dinner should be dinner. That's a time for your guests to connect, to enjoy their meal, to get full, to be treated. It helps the serving staff as well really execute and do a good job without feeling like they're impeding or like they're in the way. And more importantly than anything, I think that the people that are going up to speak for you, they are nervous, they are emotional, and they deserve the respect of full attention. And you don't have that. And between courses is not actually a thing. It's impossible to have everybody between a course at the exact same time.
Yeah. And I feel like it is an unpopular thing.
And I feel strongly.
Like, and my planners might not like it, but I just feel like it's an easy thing to execute. You kind of like have everyone's attention. Yeah. In my mind, before you brought light to it. And you kind of just, that's the norm. Like that's what you do. So then when would you suggest having speeches?
So typically our timeline.
And how long are these
like
speeches?
This. Yeah. And that's another really good one actually. Yeah. So for us, typically what we do is like, after the couple enters, we'll do housekeeping. That takes about 10 minutes or so. Then we allocate anywhere from an hour and 15 to an hour and a half or so for dinner. And that's just dinner, whether it's a buffet or whether it's plated. Of course, if you have multiple courses, it's something to talk, like more than 3 or 4 courses, something to talk about. But typically about an hour and a half is great. People are hanging out, they're eating, they're having a conversation. It's also great for the vendor team, quite frankly, because they can chill a little bit, because if you have a vendor team that's well fed and rested, they're going to be able to keep executing for you. So planners, this is for you too. But then right after that, we typically will announce kind of like, call it like a 15-minute reset. So the MC will kind of go on and say, speeches will begin in 15 minutes. This is the time when we would encourage you to grab more dessert, fill up your drink, use the washroom, whatever. And then they come back and then we head into speeches and you have full attention. Everyone's fed and they're much more likely to do that. But you're right, it is really important. And we typically tell our couples to limit it to usually 5 speeches, 6 max, and no more than 5 minutes per speech. So our speeches are only 30 minutes total.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all. And 99% of our weddings are on the dance floor by 9 p.m. with this little formula. So they're partying.
It's a good thing.
They're partying. We've practiced this many times. It's beautiful.
Do you shut down the bar during speeches?
Yes.
Would you recommend that?
Yes, because we give that 15 minutes before to go fill up your drink. That's we kind of do that reset. And you know what? If you can't go 30 minutes without a drink, what's another conversation? That's not a wedding planning conversation.
We'll have that conversation later. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. I have two just like fun questions for you as we kind of conclude our podcast, which I'm so happy that you were here and you got to share everything that you did. If you had to plan a wedding for any famous couple, who would you plan it for, and walk me through why and what it would look like? Okay. I know I'm putting you right on the spot, but I feel like you're creative enough that you could do this.
I have an answer, and it's going to make people cringe, especially given the current state of affairs of their relationship.
As much as the speeches?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be more?
It's going to be more cringy. Okay. People are going to be like, Sandra, it would be J-Lo and Ben.
J-Lo and Ben.
Yeah. Even though I know they just had their wedding and they're probably going to get divorced again. I don't think so.
No. Okay.
But it would be J-Lo and Ben. 100%.
Okay. Why? Why? Tell me why. I was not expecting this. I was expecting, I don't know, George Clooney. I was expecting
it would not be. First of all, I actually really like J-Lo. Which I mean, she's a lot of people don't.
She's great.
But you know what I love about her? I don't think she's talented in anything but dancing. She is like one of the best business people and hardworking women that I have ever.
I mean, yeah.
Not that I've met her, but like that I've ever been aware of. Like, I'm like, to go from actually having very little talent, and honestly, like but like to just continuously reinvent herself
all the time.
She like. I really.
And she's always relevant. Do you know what I mean?
That's
like always
it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Mind blowing to me. I don't care what people say if she's a diva. I'm like, you know what? She is incredible for that.
Yeah. And she's had a lot of weddings.
She's had a lot of weddings.
So how would you make her wedding different?
Okay. So that's the next. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I kind of love a good comeback story, even if it's not working anymore. I still love it. Like something came. I actually. Like, I love that piece of it. It's kind of like the one that got away. But also, she is so ultra glam, ultra fab. And I love ultra glam, ultra fab weddings.
So you would just kill it. My next question for you is, where do you see the wedding industry headed?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would like to say where I would like to see it headed, but I don't know if that will happen. I mean, because I don't really know. I don't know where it's headed, but I do. I think that people and couples are starting to take a little bit more time to book things. I think that they are doing more research, actually, even though it kind of goes against what we talked about to sign. I think the average couple is taking longer to make decisions, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But I think that we as wedding pros, we can't just like assume it's just to go on everything anymore. And I think that the way that we treat couples matters more and more and more, because this new generation of clients getting married or of couples getting married, they want that one-on-one. They want that advocate. And I think that it's headed there. I think that just having a good product or being the best of the best on Instagram or on Google or whatever is not enough anymore.
I think couples are starting to realize that their wedding is an investment. It is not a party. And that's what stalls them to make decisions. And do you find it's getting bigger? I find our industry is getting bigger in the sense of like people want more. Yeah. They want that design. They want all that floral. Like I feel like
I love that.
We're growing. Do you know what I mean? We're growing. And I didn't think it would take... I thought it would take longer out of COVID to get there.
Yeah. And I do, I do like that, but I do think that it comes from couples wanting an experience and them realizing that it is experiential and like all of these things add to that. Right. So I agree that I think that's just going to keep happening. And I think social media and TikTok and all that stuff is obviously helping that. Yeah. But I think to go back to where I would like to see it headed, I think that I am nervous. What's happening now is that TikTok and Instagram and stuff is having too big of an influence on people. I think that we have to be very careful not to get back to a higher level of a cookie cutter wedding. Because there used to be cookie cutter wedding and it was all kind of basic. And now it's like, it's all leveled up, but it's looking the same. And I think that I would like to see people really thinking about, what do I want? I have those conversations with my couples all the time. I'm suggesting this because it's not common. But it's not weird. It's just memorable, right? So I think that worries me a little. And where I say I would like to get, where I would like for it to head, I want it to head to couples really thinking about, who am I? Who am I when you take the noise away, the TikToks away, what my friends is doing away? Like, what do I want?
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Sandra, thank you so much for being here. I hope you had a great time.
I did. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yes. Come back anytime.
I'll be
on
back.
mic or off.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Awesome. Well, until next time, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Special Event Rentals podcast. Here, you'll find exclusive interviews, expert tips, and behind-the-scenes insights, diving into the dynamic world of event rentals and planning. Enjoy! Subscribe to never miss an episode.